everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk. This is the first Sonic Talk of 2018. Can you believe it? It's actually Wednesday, is it the 3rd of January? Yes, because of the way that Christmas fell, it feels like we only missed a week. And I do apologise, we couldn't bring you the special we'd anticipated last week, but unforeseen circumstances just meant we just couldn't make it happen. And it was good because it was nice to have the entire week off anyway. So welcome. This is the Music Technology Podcast, all things to do with music technology. I want to say thank you to our supporters. We've got iZotope. You can win a copy of Ozone 8, the mastering application, a little bit later on, and we've also got a word from Bitwig as well. You want to check out Bitwig too. Say hi to our chatties in the YouTube chat room. If you're wondering where you can watch this at any other time and you haven't seen it before, perhaps you're watching on sonicstate.com/live. We stream via YouTube, so you can watch it directly via YouTube. So if you subscribe to us, you get to see the notifications when we go live, but we've also got an IRC chat which you can find at sonicstate.com/live. So nice to see plenty of people in there today. I hope you haven't been too deprived of your Sonic State fix, although we did actually send out a video of Boxing Day. It was my Boxing Day beatbox video, which was Gaz reviewing the new Roland Boutique TR-08, which seemed to go down really well, and I think he's already been gift. Because there was a few dancing moves in there, which I think, bound to be turned into an animated GIF there. So, yeah. So, well, welcome. I can't wait to see that. Yeah, no, I'm waiting for the link to come through. Somebody told me it was there. So, I'll start with you, Rich, because that was your first chuckle. You let us know your presence. Rich Hiltonius, fresh back from his transatlantic New Year's hop, where you were playing with Chic, which you do on a regular basis, but you had the special kind of like golden slot on the BBC New Year's Eve, which I saw. It looked like it was a rocking gig. How was it?
It was a rocking gig. It was great. Great. The crowd, the energy in the room was amazing. What a beautiful building. What a great honor to get that slot. And to have an opportunity to do what we do. Holy shit, there's a bug on my microphone.
Wow. What, a kind of
anyway,
a spy bug or an insect kind of bug?
What's called a stink bug, which I will dispose of as soon as you cut to the next guy. But anyway, it was a great
Talk
gig.
With your mouth closed.
It's like, what the heck is moving by my eye? Oh, look at that. It was a great gig. We had a great time. I've seen it now as it was broadcast, and it freaking looks spectacular. The crew, the BBC people, the people involved in the video and the lighting production, it was just stunning to look at on TV, at least to me. And I'm not even talking about looking at me on TV, because nobody wants to do that. But I'm talking about the look of the presentation. The production is just stunning.
Yeah, they've really
got to hand it to them.
They've got
Obviously, they've done this before.
Rich, what I'll do is I'll cut, and maybe we'll come back to that in a bit. So then you can deal with your insect, your live insect
gotta go.
removal. And of course,
everybody wants to get into the act.
Yeah, we have Mr.
Durante used to say.
Yoed Nevo, who's back in the studio in London. Last time we spoke to him, he was in Tel Aviv on his Waves Week. Is that like what you call it? Has it got a special type of the month that you're talking? Waves Week.
Yeah, that's what I call it. And that's what it is.
That's what it is. So, is there anything you can tell us about? Are you working on anything exciting that you can say anything about?
I am actually. It's going to be on your screen, inside the computer, and it's going to make some noises.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, I completely understand how you might not be able to give us any more information, but in case you're wondering, Yoad, of course, he does, as well as being, let me see if I can, I've got my two-shot, we could do that, yes, as well as being a very busy producer, remixer, and songwriting, and all kind of stuff in his fabulous studio up there in London. He also develops software products in conjunction with Waves, or for Waves, as Waves. I'm not sure exactly which is which, but yeah, plenty of stuff. Many strings to the bow.
After 20 years, I'm not sure quite myself, but that's how we've been rocking for quite a while now. So, no title.
Okay, just Yoad at Waves. That sounds good. So, were you working mostly over Christmas, or did you get a bit of a break, or how did it work for you?
No, I did have a nice break. Tel Aviv weather was unbelievable. I've been there with my daughter and my wife, and lots of family and everyone. So it was nice and sunny, long walks on the beach, and
Oh
did
wow.
manage to do some work as well. So it was lovely. Came back on Saturday.
Excellent. And I noticed that you've flipped round your shot, so we now can see your sort of your mountain of keyboards behind you. So is that all of what
No,
you have
the
in the
mountain
studio?
is there.
Oh, I see.
The
We've
mountain
just
is
got
there.
the B rig. Is
No,
that?
these are the that's the monophonic kind of um, more accessible, more hands-on sort of rack.
Ah, right. So you keep that close by because I know you were telling us about the MIDI controller thing that you set up where you can control everything. So that's more of you get your hands onto it and
That's the
get stuck in,
hands-on. Yeah,
right? What's your current
yeah,
fave?
absolutely. Always SH101.
Really,
Always.
you're a 101 guy.
Yeah,
Have you tried the
absolutely,
boutique?
absolutely.
Have you tried the boutique yet?
I haven't. I have. I have two SH101s, and I don't feel the need to, to get another digital version of
Sure.
it. I'm sure it's great, but I just love it. The sound is so solid, and I was interviewed. I don't remember on which magazine about that, and the thing is with 101 is that the fact that it only has one oscillator kind of forces you to, but obviously to use one oscillator, so you get those amazing solid bass sounds. It's not
Yeah.
that you it's not that you can't do it on a mini Moog, but you never do. Because you have three oscillators, you're always tempted to, just add a little bit of that fifth and a little bit of that detune and all that, and suddenly you get, instead of a really solid bass, you get something else. With the
Interesting.
SH, you just get that, and it sounds amazing.
So would like to point. You're also traditionally a guitarist. So I want to know: do you stick the modulation grip on and strap on the SH101 and bust a move around the studio?
Not quite, no.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, Yoad. And also, we have Mr. Steve Hillier. Steve Hillier.net, of course, member of Dubstar, educator, songwriter, producer, DJ. Do you have any epic Christmas gigs then while you were?
I went over to Copenhagen, which is the most Christmassy place in the world, in my experience, and that was really nice. Did a little party in a part of Copenhagen called Christiania, which
Christian F,
is,
the classic. That part. Yeah, wow.
It's one of my favorite places in the world, quite frankly, and. So that was really good. It's always a kind of a strange atmosphere there, in the sense that usually sort of Christmas parties in England are all fueled by alcohol. Not so much in Christiania, to be honest.
No, I get that.
But it's a lot of fun, and that turned into a little writing session, which is contributing to a project that just got the confirmation kind of go ahead this morning. So I'm kind of
buzzing.
well excited
Excellent
about that. Yeah, it's a nice start to the year. And I was just thinking about what you were saying about wearing an SH101, because I've had a few through the years, and much like Yoad, I'm not going to do that again. I once wore one on stage, and I saw a video playback of it afterwards and realised that's not a good look for me. It really isn't. So,
Yeah, I can get that. Yeah, Christiana F, of course. The classic film, but Christiana, for many years, I don't know if it's still the same. It was like a city within a city, wasn't it? It was almost it was like a commune. Is that right? A commune that
yeah, that's right.
Shall we say? Was an espoused the alternative aspects of modern life, perhaps is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, my understanding is that it was an old barracks, part of the Danish army, that was abandoned in the 60s and taken over by squatters, kind of hippie squatters. And they declared it, forgive my Danish pronunciation, a Fristaten, which basically means free town. Yeah, and so they developed a sort of way of living where they had only consensus law, is my understanding. So it was only 12 rules, and if you stuck to those, you could do anything else that you wanted. And I think it's an extraordinary place to see, because although there is a police presence, although it's nothing like what you would get in the rest of the city, I think it demonstrates that actually it's not normally the law that keeps you safe. It's people just generally are generally nice most of the time. And I think that's my experience of Christiania anyway. But I know that if you speak to regular Copenhagen people, they'll have their own view. I think that people associate it a little bit with lawlessness, which of course it is, and other sort of stuff like that. But in my experience, it's great. And,
Excellent.
I'm
I've
looking
never
forward to
been
going
there.
back in March.
I've been to Copenhagen, but
recommend
I've
it.
never been there. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Well, I suppose this kind of talk of New Year and gigs and stuff. We should probably start off with with the classic topic, which is of course New Year's resolutions. I mean, as we know, there seems to be this kind of not pressure, but it's a norm that one would make a New Year's resolution and then try and better or improve or change something about oneself. And I wonder if anybody in terms of musicality or music technology, whether anybody's made any kind of like perhaps informal nods, so I would like to perhaps do something or other along those lines. I don't know if anyone's got anything like that. Maybe I'll start actually. The thing that I want to do is actually try and not work so much, maybe take a bit more time off, but that's a really bad one to start at in January because obviously we've got NAMM in 2 weeks and it's just chaos up until then, so that won't be. And maybe after NAMM, and then it'll be Super Booth. But maybe in the spring I'll start thinking about my New Year's resolutions that I could do with that. I don't know. Rich, are you a New Year's resolution kind of guy, or are you just kind of happy with the way things are, which is no reason why you shouldn't be?
Well, you could say both. I don't often consciously make New Year's resolutions, but I resolve this year to be creative and receptive as much as possible, and to continue to revel in the opportunity to touch people's hearts with this music.
Yeah,
and if I get to do that and make it to the next one of these, I'll be really, really happy.
Yeah, that's a great one. You what sort of almost like the Dice Man, where you have to say yes to absolutely everything. Is it that kind of? Maybe not going that far. Just say don't say no to anything. Yeah, I don't know. No.
But flow. Be with flowing. Be flowing.
Absolutely. Steve,
get out of your own way.
What about you then, Steve? Have you got any kind of resolution? I mean, obviously you just got a new job in, so maybe that's.
Yeah. I do actually. I've 2 resolutions which I'll tell you about very quickly. The first one, it's not really a music technology thing, but I've realised over the last few years that I have times of the day where I'm most creative, and it tends to be early morning and late afternoon into the evening. And just through the way that work has fallen over the last few years, unfortunately, those aren't times that I'm working. I tend to be working mainly, especially with other people, in the afternoon. So I've got to see if I can make it so I only do collaborative sessions in the late afternoon and in the evening, and do solo when I'm working on my own in the early morning. And I think that might, there might be something in that for me. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ban social media from the studio.
Good plan.
Not because... Well, simply because I've been thinking about this over the last few years, particularly. I've noticed that, compared to the olden days, when if you were in a studio, you were completely isolated. There was no mobile phones, and if you were lucky or unlucky, I suppose, there was a telephone. Whereas these days, if you're working, you've got your mobile there, you've got Facebook up on that screen, you've got this, that, and the other, whole load of distractions going on. So I'm going to not have those distractions and basically switch them all off.
That's an interesting idea. I know. Yeah, how are you, Yoad, with people with on phones and social media? Because there's a lot of waiting around, isn't there? So it's very tempting to kind of I'll just.
Yeah, I don't do it myself in the studio, and I'm not very strong on it anywhere else, for that matter. But obviously, all the artists that I work with, without exception, they sit on the sofa on their whatever platform it is. All of them, without exception, go and shoot my old oscilloscope here, which is doing some nice shapes, and put it on Instagram, thinking that they are so original and they are the first ones to be doing it. But no, I don't get distracted that much by that. Emails is the one thing that kind of
That's difficult to ignore,
I want to be this year I want to have more time to just basically do nothing in the studio. So not to work, but just to play, because it's always been my hobby as well. And I've been talking about it with Pino, who sits here and watches he's just watching the broadcast in the other room. That it's my hobby. Pino's my assistant. It's my hobby as well as my job, and I miss my hobby basically, and I
Yeah,
wanted
well,
to
I know,
get
I agree,
back
and that
more into that.
finding time to kind of to just play a noodle. We've talked about this before. Just kind of just to follow your nose and not have any kind of creative brief to be working to is important to keep your chops up as well, because you're always going to discovering things that wouldn't not, with time pressure or things that you kind of have to do for a specific purpose. One tends to follow the path that will get you there, rather than one that will take you on a kind of round trip, because time is money and all of those sort of things. So yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good one. So yeah, a good call there. Right, well, just while with that pause, I think we'll just have a word from our friends at Bitwig. Bitwig Studio 2.2 is here. Bitwig Studio combines both timeline and clip-based sequencing on Windows, macOS and Linux. It features VST3 support, plug-in crashing protection and a highly flexible user interface with a lightning-fast workflow for keyboard, mouse and also touchscreens. It's great on the new Microsoft Surface devices. Modularity is also central to Bitwig Studio. It focuses on strengthening the way devices interact with one another and offers a highly flexible modulation routing system, so you can route almost anything to anywhere, including audio rate modulations. Bitwig also offers many sync options: MIDI clock master slave, MTC, CV and gate, hardware audio clock and Ableton Link. So why not try Bitwig Studio today? Go to bit.ly/Bitwig now and try it out for yourself. Why not indeed? I want to say thank you very much to Bitwig for sponsoring the show. Always great to welcome new people on. So let's think. What did we do have some topics? Although to be fair, the space between Christmas and New Year is not generally the time that one will be releasing lots of products. I mean, you tend to get offers and Boxing Day sales, and there was all of that sort of stuff. But to be honest, we just shut down. I mean, normally I'm looking at our CMS, and there's a huge pile of stories over the last 7 days, and I got in today, and there was nothing. It was just completely empty, and I felt a bit guilty about that, because it's like, well. But I don't think anybody missed anything specifically exciting. But hopefully we've got some topics to keep going. Actually, one of them, which did come up, I don't know if you saw this, the Facebook and Universal signed a big new deal, which is kind of akin to, I guess, to what YouTube have been doing with labels, where they protect their rights and in turn, they can make money off the non-monetized. And it's part of Facebook's big push to probably take on the kind of elephant in the room. YouTube kind of pretty much dominate the online video market. And for musicians, it's very important, because obviously YouTube is a great marketing platform, certainly for us and for musicians, posting jams and posting all sorts of other things. But it's an interesting idea. I don't know if anyone... I'd imagine, Joed, you're probably dealing with publishers at more of a coalface level at this point, because, you're working on sort of current pop stuff. I don't know if you write things yourselves. I mean, do you think this... I think it's important that there's competition, but I wonder how much competition when you're talking to these two huge behemoths. I mean, UMG is the biggest record company in the world, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know what it means to me, what it means to other musicians. I think it's yet to be seen. No doubt that YouTube is the main platform for music videos, but for all other videos, and this is what I've been using it for as well. So I watch a lot of just random videos about technology, about obviously music technology and stuff like that, as well as music videos. I think, and I seem to be getting just from Facebook, apart from music videos, some clips about how to make jewelries from used water bottles and things like that. So I think, I think they have a lot of catching up to do before they can compete with YouTube on the broad level. But I don't know. I suppose that getting the music, more kind of to a higher level is a start.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it does make a big difference. I know, Rich, I don't know how much, sorry, that's not Rich, that's Rich there. I don't know how much this kind of affects your world, but I think one of the things that is interesting about this is it's also going to be a vehicle for certainly Universal artists or Universal publishing artists to get kind of some revenue kickback from videos that maybe have their music synced in them or whatever. And it's sort of done in the same way that the digital right management happens on YouTube. So that's hopefully a good thing, as long as it's probably as long as you're seeing billions and billions of views, you might actually earn a couple of quid. So that might be good for everybody else.
I guess the simple principle of having more than one avenue for this kind of media, through which this kind of media can be easily dispensed, is always a good thing somehow in my mind. But I really don't have a strong feeling about or opinion of this yet, because I don't know how it plays out. And maybe that just makes me an old guy. I'm not sure, but I don't have a vision for how this is going to interact in my life.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you there, and I think what Yoad was saying about the way that they deliver kind of related videos is still very clunky, and they also put the way that they sort of. We've become so used to, you scroll the timeline, a video starts to play, you look at it, you watch it, but now they're inserting ads in the middle very quickly. So what tends to happen, you watch the first 30 seconds and then scroll. So I don't think there's much completion going on there. I know, Steve, does this, what do you think?
Well,
good news?
Well, first of all, I mean, I agree with Rich in the sense that it's early days, and so it's difficult to have an informed opinion about this. But when I first saw this news, and the more I thought about it, the more I read about it, and speaking about this now, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And I'm not quite sure why. There's something about this that I don't like. I think for me, it's something to do with Facebook having yet more power. Mm-hmm. And this time, and for the first time, it's sort of encroaching on, not for the first time, but it's encroaching on a world that's really important to me. And as I said, it's too early really to know how this is going to work out, but you can already see that they're talking about the possibility of prioritizing UMG artists and UMG videos. And, that reminds me a little bit of this echo chamber thing that we've been talking about now for a few years. And it's not obviously not going to be the same as just reflecting back your own political views, but rather than Facebook being a place of discovery that's unregulated and it's all about recommendation, about essentially anything goes, this feels to me just a bit like, anything goes as long as it's on UMG.
Yeah,
this is speculation on my part. I have to, stress this. It just makes me feel like really what I would prefer is to have a situation where it's not an established big company like Facebook that's doing it. It's somebody else that's come along and brought a fresh attitude and perspective on music discovery, and sort of built it from scratch and built it for everyone to benefit, from the musicians to the audience to all the rights holders. That's not what I'm feeling from this.
Yeah, well, it is a big business, high-level corporate deal. They say multi-year. It's like they've obviously signed a pretty big deal there somewhere along the line. So maybe you're right about that. And that kind of, there's a danger that there's a homogenization that, in the same way that that there used to be. It was sort of late 80s, early 90s, when everybody used Apogee and Pro Tools, and there was a sort of sameness to the sound, and partly because the DSP technology was kind of fairly a narrow band of innovation. Now it's wide open, and there's all sorts of great stuff out there. But there is a danger that might happen. I know, Rich, you look like you might be, you might have an additional point to say. I think you were agreeing with that sort of point about.
I was very much agreeing with Steve's point about the concern regarding the narrowness of the presentation and the sort of corporate involvement intertwining with one particular area. But it was interesting as Steve was describing this more sort of utopian vision of what it could be. It sounded a heck of a lot to me like Spotify.
Yeah, well,
do you know what, Rich? That actually was what I was thinking, but I didn't want to throw a sort of a Swedish cat amongst the pigeons.
Okay,
Well,
very good.
that would be good also. I mean, I think, again, we come back to, if we're talking about streaming services, I mean, the problem with Spotify is it doesn't really make any money for anybody unless you're Beyonce or Coldplay. There's not much revenue that's kicking back to the artist, and that model hasn't been figured out yet. I don't know if you've... do you know anyone, Yoad, who's making a lot of money out of Spotify?
Even if I do, they wouldn't say. So I don't know.
No, fair play.
Everyone is just complaining all the time. So
yeah, well,
exactly.
yes, I know what you mean. I wasn't necessarily trying to be a kind of down on the whole thing. As new technology is, one of the great things about it is it does allow discovery. It does allow very quick. Yeah. The ability for things to become big very quickly or well-known very quickly on merit sometimes, not just on the amount of marketing budget you've got to promote it.
But Nick, just to throw something in here, it's a good question. You asked Yoad about, do you know anyone who's making a living from Spotify? But I actually do know at least half a dozen people who are making a living from YouTube. And most of them are musicians. There's a couple of women I know who aren't doing music, and they're earning a living wage from that. I'm wondering, will this arrangement with UMG and Facebook impact on that? That income these people are having from YouTube, and will this sort of revenue stream be available through Facebook for these? Vloggers or
there has been talk about that happening, which and I think is a very valid point. There has been talk about that happening, definitely. I mean, if you do a lot of videos, and it doesn't have to be a lot of video. I mean, okay, I'm going to say a lot. I mean, it's not hard. We do around about 600,000 to 800,000 views a month. And that generates some revenue. It's not a living wage, or certainly not in terms of business sense. But if it was just me in my bedroom in my vest, then it would be okay. If I had other revenue streams. But so it's quite possible to be kind of almost a cottage industry. And Facebook have been talking about introducing the notion of monetizing native video that you upload and then giving a kickback. But so far that doesn't seem to have actually kind of come back. They've got so many clients who want to advertise. Yet they don't seem to have pushed it back towards the artist. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe they haven't got around to rolling it out yet. Anyway, but yeah, that's a good point about people being able to make a living wage out of the YouTube platform, and that I guess is something. I think it works out. It's around about 30% of revenue, or I can't remember which way around it works. Anyway, without getting too commercial on it, how about something completely different?
Hello, my name's Caitlin. You might have noticed that I'm wearing a crown here, and that's because I've just been to a Christmas party. I want to say thank you to Chris because he's offered me this website for free. It's called Learning Modular. And now we're in the glossary here, and I'm going to read you this sentence here because it's under clock, and we've got a new clock divider here that we're going to use. A clock usually refers to the main rhythmic pulse in a system. Now I'm going to demonstrate that using this purple wire here, which is connected to our sign here that we have set up so it makes a clock pulse every time one of these red lights flashes. Now I'm going to turn it on. Now there's a clock pulse in this purple wire every time one of these lights flashes. Now I'm going to plug it into the trigger on our bass drum here so that you can hear it.
Let's go. Oh yeah.
It's a bit fast and I only want it.
That is just one of the most adorable and awesome things because there are two reasons. A, it's great to see a little girl who is obviously not just working from a script there. She genuinely has a knowledge and an interest. And also, she's able to explain it actually pretty well, better than most of us, certainly as on this side of the camera. And I just think that's brilliant and kind of like, doesn't that warm the cockles of your heart? I don't know, Steve. I'm kind of, and clock division is a thorny subject, and she does. If you watch the whole video, she explains it very well.
I'll have to watch it to the end. Then it's stumped me on many occasions. It's it's so heartwarming to see a child working with technology, and it's kind of inspiring for me because this weekend I have to do Christmas all over with the in-laws up in Cheshire, and my nephew has decided that he's going to build a robot like they see on Robot Wars, and he's enlisted Uncle Steve to design it and make it for him. So I'm going to be doing a lot of this over the weekend, I think.
Well, watching YouTube videos on how to make and design robots, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, and not leading to post-Christmas disappointment with little Joshua.
Yeah. Oh, well, I hope it works out for you as well. Rich, I mean, I know your kids have grown up and they've become, they're involved in music and music technology. So, they're following in their father's footsteps to a degree there. I mean, how young were they or did they show an interest at an early age?
They showed an interest at an early age, mostly because of my wife's participation in drum corps. And that was their early musical experiences, and they were both involved in playing in drum corps on various instruments from a very early age. And that was how they kind of got into it. So as much as it looks like it must have been me, because I'm the visible musician in the family, actually comes by through my wife. This girl could not have been more adorable. And I did try and introduce one of my sons to the MS-20 and the conceptual vision of analog synthesis through my having an MS-20 at the time, which is actually a really good sort of educational tool, in addition to being now a much sought after synthesizer. So I did have a go at it, and he wasn't put off by it at all, but he wasn't that interested in it, didn't follow up on it that well. But the culture was completely different back then. And this girl's fascination and the availability of this information online for her, and her impetus, her energy to want to go after this information is just absolutely adorable to me.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And it's the YouTube channel is called The Mad Music Machine, and I think it's kind of let me see if I've got the webpage up here, and it's just a series of videos, and obviously I don't know if it's Dad's Modular or another family member, and they're sort of building it together, and it just seems like such a brilliant idea. I know you say you've got a kid or kids, so do they follow in your footsteps? What sort of areas are they interested in?
Yeah, I have a 2.5-year-old girl, and I think that the thing that really warms my heart with this girl on the video is that it's the fact that she is a girl rather than a boy, because if he was a little boy, then you would say, oh, good on him, and he's bright and clever and well done. But the fact that it's a girl is much more, I don't know, that's the real the real thing here for me, because they're not, even today there aren't many women in this profession. In this, in music technology, even in waves, there's, I don't know, out of 200 people or so, there's maybe 20 or 30 women, let alone in studios and women producers and women mixers and women. Well, my wife happens to be a music DJ. I mean, obviously female, and a house DJ. And what we did give Tia, our daughter, to play with is an MC303. I think it's an old 90s kind of
a romp sampler thing.
Roland thing. Yeah, horrible. And but she does, yeah, and she does, tweak the filter and does the wow thing with her, and it's very cute. But the thing is that she presses the demo buttons or the built-in projects and dances to like raving trance, which is not very nice. And my wife, as being a house DJ, gets really horrified by it. But yeah, I think it's amazing.
the fact that it's interesting, isn't it? Because in the visual arts, certainly photography, painting, film directing, video work, there's a much broader range of women. I mean, it's still massively skewed in favor of men, but there seems to be more. I wonder what it is about the audio arts that is maybe just less interesting, less. That's not necessarily the word I'm looking for. Less of a Rich. Help me out.
Maybe it's that cameras have been in the hands of children longer than Volcas have.
Yeah, maybe that's true as well. Yeah.
Maybe
Good
that's
point.
it.
Yeah, I think that, or even
it is perceivably more part of that math science divide where, for God knows how long, and at least in this country, boys seem to be more encouraged to go after the math science side of things, and this was just part of the way people had been brought up, at least when I was younger. And it was more rare to find women excelling in the math and sciences. But there's really no more math or science about audio than there is about light. So
yeah.
On some level that sort of breaks down. But so I have to think it has to do with the fact that as kids, at least when I was a kid, you had a little camera with some kind of film you could load, and you could run around and take pictures of things,
and also phones, obviously,
it was
big
accessible.
Yeah,
Pardon?
particularly now, obviously, everyone with smartphones and films. I mean,
Of
they're
course,
all into
even more so now. But I'm just saying they've been longer in the culture than personal recorders, which started probably functionally with Porta Studio technology, which was around 1980.
That's true enough.
So maybe that's it.
I just want to, if I can just build on what Rich is saying. I noticed, I'm very lucky that I mainly work with women. That's how it's worked out for me. And I've noticed over the years that the singers and writers that I work with, the women, have become ever more involved in technology. I think it's like Rich said, it's that these machines haven't been around long enough for there to be, as long as cameras and other things like that, for there to be a language that has evolved beyond just sort of masculine jargon, if you know what I mean. I probably should have thought this through more before I started speaking. But what I'm saying is, that I do think this is going to change, and I have particularly noticed this decade that most of the women that I've worked with, they're creating stuff on laptops and really just doing the same things that the guys would do, but in their own way. I don't mean in their own way like as a gender, but as individuals. So I think this will change over time.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and probably a good time to just interject. Hopefully, with the stream is still up. I'm sorry that went away, but we are now going to hear from our friends at iZotope. Of course, Ozone 8 has been out for some time now, but it still remains to be one of the most go-to mastering suites as set up. With Master Assistant, you're able to tell it kind of rough direction you want to go in, and through the use of machine learning, it's able to make all sorts of very intelligent decisions based on the program material and based on this ever-growing library of sounds and sonics that it can analyze and suggest. There's also the ability for the tonal balance control to kick in, which is a visual representation of the various different bands within the music, and allows you to kind of achieve a kind of rough visual representation of what you should be aiming for. Very useful visualizing mixing in that way. We've also got the ability to track referencing. You could A and B between. It's also worth mentioning that if you've got an instance of Ozone running in the track, you can refer to other instances of Neutron 2 or other Ozones from the same kind of master bus version, which allows you to tweak various aspects of the mix from within the same environment. So all sorts of very powerful mastering and mixing tools in there as well. And we'd like to encourage you to try it out for yourself. If you go to iZotope.com/ozone, as ever with many of their things, there's a 10-day free demo, and you can check it out for yourself. There's a lot of stuff to in fact check out. And of course, we do have competition. Last time we asked you to tweet out the full mixing and Ozone 8, and we've got a winner, which is actually in Russian. which I cannot pronounce whatsoever. But the Twitter handle is at Crawl Queen. So that's actually something I can pronounce. So at Crawl Queen, if you are listening, to get in touch, and iZotope will deposit a full working copy of Ozone 8 into your account, and you can enjoy that at your leisure. And of course, we have, as always, another competition this week. So you can win for next show a copy of iZotope's Ozone 8 with the hashtag MixItWell and the hashtag Ozone 8. That's Mix It Well, which is one word, and you tweet those to at Sonicstate and at iZotope Inc. So the hashtag Mix It Well and the hashtag Ozone 8 to at Sonicstate and at iZotope Inc. will get you entered into the competition. Once again, we thank them for their contribution to the show. Much appreciated. Right. Oh, Rich, yes.
May I say, Nick, that I recently had a wonderful iZotope RX experience.
Oh, really?
Yes. Using one of their modules to denoise a dialogue thing. And it was stunningly effective.
Yeah, I mean,
and easy.
Yeah, it can save.
It was remarkable.
Certainly for video, it can and other applications, it can save a lot of time and whatever. As there are, of course, other products out there. I know maybe Yoad would perhaps agree that there are other brands and products out there.
I love RX6. I have it and I use it. We make noise reduction products as well. There's room for everybody, I think. But I do like this package. It's great. It's really good.
Excellent. Right. So next, I wonder whether I'm going to go to this one actually, because this one was just. I know it's quite late. This was originally unveiled at CES 2017, which is obviously last year. But this is a kind of proof of concept from Razer, who make high-end kind of gaming laptops, and this one has 3 17-inch 4K displays that kind of slot out in robotic fashion to create this kind of rather CIA-worthy mobile workstation laptop thing. Obviously, it's been used for gaming here, but it's also, could be great for video or DAW work. Still on the concept bench, I think. I don't know how much it's going to be, but it's packed full of, I imagine it's got the highest level i7 processors, and also got NVIDIA 1080, which is a really high-end graphics card as well. And it got me thinking, because I thought, wow, that's, it's obviously designed at the gamers. But as we know, our laptop choices generally in the creative industry, certainly for music, tend to be more Apple-based products. But I'm wondering whether or not there's this sort of move, not away from Apple, but for more, less about the thinness and the portability for it to be, just something that you can fit in your man bag. It's something that you could actually pick up, put in a bag and take, and it's that powerful thing. Because, I mean, moving a 24-inch iMac is not much fun, but something like that, you could imagine maybe taking and working in a remote location. I know, I'm going to start with you, Rich, because you're about the place, you're all over the place. I know that you use Apple products, but do you think there's a need or a desire for something that's, portable? It's pushing the boundaries of portability, but is it ultimately portable for something with that much poke? Yeah.
Absolutely, I do. This looks like a terrific product to me. First of all, the actual production of the promotional thing that they did is really, really nicely done. But I think it'd be a really, really useful remote DAW controller, assuming that it's not too heavy. And I tend to be a guy who likes small laptops. So this isn't sort of like suitable to my normal day-to-day laptop lifestyle. But as a specific purpose-built remote, portable DAW system running whatever you like on, in Windows. And apparently, according to my son, who apparently knew something about this, it's also well suited to Hackintosh type behavior.
Really?
That's what I was about to ask. That was my.
That's what he told me. But I can't. I can't stand up. He's my boy.
Yeah. Yoad, I'm guessing your heart has maybe quickened a little at those facts, because I know that you have been known to discuss the Hackintosh, the thorny Hackintosh issue.
Well, I actually switched completely now, so that's my main system here. I don't know if it's legal or maybe I shouldn't be saying it in public, but it's absolutely mind blowing. And there's no turning back for me. that's the way forward. I mean, to be honest, the only reason I use Mac is because it runs Logic. It's the only platform that can run Logic. Um, I used to be a PC guy before. So when everyone made the switch from the Atari to the Mac, I actually switched to the PC platform just to spite, because I hated that thing you said about Pro Tools and Apogee and all that. I hate this, and these days it's actually Pro Tools and iPhone. They kind of go hand in hand, or it's you know, I don't like that. I like to think different, and to use a PC.
Rather
How is that?
ironically, yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. But absolutely. So this seems like a really nice laptop to have. Although I have to say, I did think about it, and I do have 3 screens here on the desk, and it's nice and everything. But what I really not would like to see is actually more real estate vertically rather than horizontally. Because if you think about it, you have a large track count, and especially in Cubase, in Pro Tools it's not a problem because you can't do much from the, well, you can, but basically in Logic and Cubase, you always have to kind of expand and
yeah,
open and
zoom and
close
zoom.
this
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
triangle to show you the track, the mixer or the plugins or this and that. And I would like to see the screen actually taller. I don't need it to stretch horizontally more because I can just zoom in, but you can't zoom in to show to show the effect track and the region parameters and the phase and all this, all those things that you have in Cubase and Logic. So I would like to see. I can't imagine a laptop being
Yeah, well,
stretched
have you? Well,
vertically because it will fall off. But
the wind
yeah.
caught it. Have you tried? Have you thought about running monitors in portrait mode rather than landscape mode? Because that works, doesn't it? As well, you see that a lot.
It does. It does work. The thing is that the window to the live room I kind of just have the perfect. So I have the screen about this high, and then I can see the singers or the whoever is playing drums and whatever. But it allows me to kind of, whenever I don't want
Giggle behind it
them
when
to
you
see,
don't want to see. Yeah,
exactly. Or I need to send a text message while they're singing, so I kind of pretend to, stuff
when
like that. But
when you're sitting there with your hands. Oh my God, no more.
no,
Yeah, I'm sure that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't.
But that's interesting. I don't know if how many, because I used to work with a guy who was a coder, and you see it a lot in coding situations where people turn their monitors up.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
it
get
makes more sense
you
because
can
it's
see
like
the
a
whole
list view.
Yeah, exactly. You see that. Steve, interesting. I mean, obviously it's a Windows PC, but
Yeah, that would make me unhappy. But I do think that this looks really interesting, and it raises a few questions for me because first of all, I like the idea of having screens that slot out from the side. Because I really like big screens, and in fact, this laptop that I'm using right now is the last of the MacBook Pro 17-inch screen machines. I don't know if anyone remembers those.
yeah.
Brilliant. This one's still going strong. But the questions that I would ask is, first of all, battery power, battery life. Now, you would probably think that with a machine like this, you would always have it plugged into the mains. But I've been in many situations just recently where, for example, I've lost power because the power supply is broken, or the power supply to the stage is gone, but not to the PA, that kind of thing. And I'm just kind of wondering, just what would the battery life be if you're running 3
pretty
really
low
quantities? You know what I mean? It's not going to be
might not
long,
even have batteries in it, I suppose. Thinking about that.
No. Well, that would be another problem for me. The other one is that I actually really do like laptops being light and thin. But I don't see that having 3 monitors that slide out like that would necessarily make it a lot heavier. I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, at least not in that sense. But if the battery life was good and if it wasn't impossibly heavy, this is something that I would, for example, love to take on stage. I think it would look really impressive, and particularly if you had it behind you facing the audience. I mean, that would make it a very expensive stage prop, but that's the kind of guy I am, I suppose.
Yeah, for the showman. Yeah, it's an interesting
Yes,
idea.
exactly.
I mean, it is an interesting. I mean, that whole notion of just having screens that slot out. I mean, it's we've got these big, wide, curved ones. So you could imagine a situation where you just buy a monitor, which is effectively 3 monitors. I mean, you don't need the laptop. What about if you just had something that you could that is, maybe 15-inch or 17-inch size that you can pull out and becomes 3 monitors? I mean, there's a product right there that would work with, because you might have a Mac Mini or something else, or another laptop that you just put in a Thunderbolt connection to. I mean, that seems like a product. I mean, it's very specialized, and the only time you generally see them advertised with such glamour is for driving games, shoot 'em ups, or flight simulators, isn't it? You don't. They did show some pictures in the product page. I think I've got it here somewhere of something going on with the actual. Hold on, before I go, I'm not going anywhere. Somebody using it as a video editing kind of thing. Yeah, there we go. I don't know what that is. That looks like Premiere or something. That looks kind of interesting. Could you just imagine sitting on the aeroplane in the central seat with those kind of sitting out playing, watching your movies or your ultra wide screen? I mean, I think it's going to weigh about 10 to 20, 10 pounds plus, maybe 15 pounds, and it's not the sort of thing that is portable for that reason. It's just, but it reminds me a little bit like one of those things where you have sort of mobile observation offices in in war films where they just pull one of those out and just go, and there it is. There's the command and control center. I mean, it's the sort of thing that is almost a military style kind of piece of hardware, but I have to say I do like the look of that. I would, and I haven't tried it. I don't know whether it would hack into. If it does hack into, that could be interesting. I've not tried that, but yeah. And again, I don't know the legality of it. I think there's something to do with the operating system more than anything else. But hey, we'll gloss over that.
My understanding is. Oh, okay, we'll gloss over it. It's probably for the best.
Yeah, let's leave that for now, shall we? Okay. Oh, yeah, and the other thing that we were going to talk about was the note that there's been this proliferation. This is something that Yoad brought in. This proliferation of cloud. Have we got time for this? I guess we. How's everybody for time before I launch into it? Because it's. Yeah, are we okay? How are you doing, Yoad, for time?
Good.
I'm good.
Okay. The proliferation of kind of cloud-based sample browsing and sort of production ecosystems. We've got Splice.com, which we reviewed back in 2015, which not only does version control of Ableton Live, Logic X, and I think FL Studio and GarageBand 10, but it also does, you can buy and browse cloud-based samples and bring them in and drag them up via plugins. There's also hold on, I've got my list here. Loopcloud.com, which is the loop master. They've got like 5 million plus samples that you can access to, and there's also Noise. Now, you brought this to the table, yeah. I mean, what was it that kind of made you want to think about it? Because it is a different way of working, right?
Absolutely. So, throughout the years, I've been accumulating sample libraries and just samples and editing EXS programs and finding this and finding that. And these days I find that it's almost like, so basically owning sample libraries is almost like owning film DVDs. It's a bit redundant because these days you just go onto Noise. Basically, you don't have to. Noise is an instrument. It's a plugin, basically. So you browse the samples from your session, and then you just drag. So you don't have to have anything stored. Basically, whatever you're looking for, you just type it. You search for it by genre. Also, the abundancy of samples and styles and producers and labels when we talk about Splice. Just means that you have so many different things and you can get inspired by so many ideas by just browsing. And they have charts for different, for the whatever weekly charts, most popular for this genre and this, and the quality is just amazing. So you don't have to buy the whole pack. You just find one bass drum and you drag it to your session, and then you it's just an amazing concept, and it's so it just makes me look at my whole library that I've collected through the years kind of redundant.
It's interesting that, I mean, I think one of I was watching a review earlier as well. I mean, because all of these services offer pretty much the same kind of concept where you just pay for what you download. It's very similar to what's happened in the music, you know, the sort of death of the album as a whole concept kind of thing. It's just like, I like this track, I like that track, you know, these sort of things. And that's sort of similar to what's happened. I don't know, Rich, do you use any of these kind of things? I mean, because I guess, you know, if you're looking for something very specific, you might know that you've got it in your library. But if it's something specific you haven't got, you know, it's harder to find because you might go, is it in this pack somewhere? Do I have to buy the whole thing to find out?
I've used these kinds of things, but not cloud resident. And I've been wondering what the heck all these noise emails I've been getting are about. And now I'm beginning to get a picture of what it's about. I would have to say that their marketing is really, really sketchy. But so if I understand this correctly, that when you do, as you open their plugin within your session and start browsing bass drums and you find the one you want and you probably do some kind of quote unquote in-app purchase in order to make it available to you for whatever.
No, not
they're credit based.
Not
Usually,
quite.
you sort of charge up a number of credits and then you just use them up. You know, each one is a credit.
Oh, see you.
Well,
I
in
see,
the
I
case
see.
of the case of
Yes,
noise,
sir.
it's actually subscription based. So once you subscribe, it's unlimited, and you can buy as much as you want and download as much as you want. But you can also set it to sync to your host, and you can set the key so it will transpose. And so it's basically like having Apple loops. Because it will also play in time. So once it downloads or once it previews, it will be in sync with your session. So if you're talking about loops and things like that, or vocal phrases or whatever,
Right.
it's like Apple loops, and
It's
then you
done.
drag it
done.
to
Very
an
clever.
audio track. Yeah,
Yeah.
Very
yeah,
clever.
it's amazing.
Yeah, very nice. I could see, and then once you've completed that procedure for the duration of your project, that audio material is resident in your local world.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So that if you were to become disconnected from the outside, in other words, it's not really dependent in a real-time sort of way on your external connection.
No, just
Once
when
you've
you're browsing, I think.
acquired the material, you are then once again working locally
Yeah,
in your
absolutely.
own little local area world. That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, you know, because people like Sound Ideas used to sell boxes and boxes of CDs, and there used to be all these other paradigms for distributing this kind of material, but this is almost like, you know, Spotify for music makers.
Yeah, it kind of
makes
is
some
like that, and
sense.
I think that's the thing, because I used to carry, you know, it's something that grows, isn't it? I mean, Yoed will probably, and probably Steve, you'll identify with this. You know, you work on an album project, you build a library of sounds, you keep them with you, and then it just grows as you kind of follow it around. So you end up having to lug a bigger and bigger and bigger hard drive with all of those things that you might one day want. You know, those bass drums or whatever. You know, I mean, is that the way that you've sort of traditionally worked? I mean, I don't know if you use these kind of services or not, Steve.
No, I don't use these kind of services, but that is definitely how my sample library has progressed, and it's enormous now. It's quite frankly, it's unwieldy. So I think that the concept here is really good, and also it feels sort of inevitable, really. You know, that somebody would do this now that we all have these fast. Well, most of us have these fast internet connections. I do have a question though. Maybe I can help out here. So you can download these samples, and they can exist in your sort of local network. You don't need an internet connection once you've downloaded them. But do you have permanent access to them? As in, if your subscription ends, does your access to those samples
Absolutely.
end as well?
Yeah, most of them they
It
do.
does
Yeah,
end.
yeah. No, most of them. Once you've paid for and downloaded, you know, up to that point, you keep what you've got until then.
Okay. Fair
Basically,
enough. I mean,
when you
that's
use
that.
when you use a sample in your project, or even when you preview a sample, it's already in your computer as a temporary file, because you obviously, in order to play it back. But once you drag it into your session, then it copies it to a folder on your hard drive, and you can designate whichever folder you want that to be in.
Right.
I use it straight into Dropbox, so I can access the samples from all my computers. But
So you have
it's just there.
So you have a permanent license even if you stop your subscription.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
I
great.
think so far that's the way it works. I mean, the other thing that Splice are doing is interesting because when we reviewed it, I used it for collaborating on Ableton projects, and the version control thing's quite interesting because you work on a session and then you save it and you can upload the differences to your Splice account, and then maybe what you can do is say, "Oh, Steve, do you fancy having a look at this?" And then you could log in and I could share it with you. You could download it, tweak it, upload it, be another version. I go, "Yeah, I like this, like that." Those, I mean, there's that aspect to it as well. But I think the kind of thrust of what perhaps you'll say, Yoed, is that this notion of, I mean, it's what the web does and what computers do really well, which is databasing. Essentially, that's kind of what it is, isn't it? It's just
Absolutely.
a fancy database front end, and it's all down to sort of click tagging and kind of figuring out that way. I mean, it's in many ways the similar sort of thing that what Native Instruments are doing with Complete Control, which is the big umbrella for all of those plugins. And I'm sure everybody's got very similar sort of concepts, but this is taking it to another level because if you go to Loop Cloud, for instance, the Loop Masters one, I mean, they've been going for years and years, and they've got, it's like 5 million samples. I mean, which is going to be more than enough. I mean, it does rather remind me back about that time when you're going, yeah, we spent 4 hours in the studio auditioning snare drums for the track that we were working on that Dave's tell. You could end up in that world again quite easily, I suppose, right?
I think that in my world it was auditioning hi-hats, which was even more enjoyable. But yeah, I think that this is. I really like this approach to cloudy music making. The idea that it's a vast library, you pay a subscription, you can have as much as you eat, and I think that's a positive step forward. What I don't like so much is the subscription model that, for example, Roland have got going, where you could use a whole load of instruments, but once your subscription ends, so does your access to these instruments. And I really do hope, because these instruments are excellent, the boutique series obviously, but the software instruments that Roland have devised over the last few years have been superb. I just really hope that they can work out a different way to monetize their work without having just this choice of subscription only. And I know that if you subscribe to the Roland Cloud for a year, you get one instrument for free. I know that, but I sort of feel like I'd like them to have a rethink, because their work is excellent, just not the way.
Yeah, I know. I take your point there. I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, all of us have probably got, some form of Spotify or some kind of ongoing music library thing where, you're paying maybe $10 a month or something like that. And many of these systems, I think, what's the one? I think Splice does $7.99 and $13.99 for a number of credits. I think Noise is $99 a year, so that's going to be around about $10 a month. The idea that we wouldn't do that for accessing the individual component parts of our content is interesting. It's like a kind of it's a philosophical leap for many people, or maybe they're because I know Splice have been hiring recently, and they must be getting something right. I mean, even though they're still only, I mean, when we reviewed Splice. I think it was 2015, so a while back, they had Logic Pro X, Live 8 and 9, and GarageBand, and they said there were going to be more coming. They still haven't actually increased the number of supported DAWs, and that by supported I mean that integrate directly with the asset management side of things. So obviously it's the samples and the plug, because they do plugins where you can buy to rent. So you would rent a plugin for a while, and then after a certain amount of time it's yours because you've paid for it anyway. So it's almost like hire purchase, or kind of, it's like a banking product in many ways, as well. It's just a clever way of dressing it up. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, do you subscribe to multiple ones? I mean, do you find you use it a lot? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I have Noise. I did work for example Sonic. I did some work where I did my analog Nevo analog machines, which is samples of a lot of my analog synths in a Contact kind of under a Contact engine. So I know Dave, and he's a great guy, and their product is just amazing, because they switched models from just selling sample libraries to this Noise platform, which is unlimited and all that. So really great. Splice, I think it has changed since you review it in 2015 quite a bit in the sense of, for me, what matters rather than sharing and projects and things like that, is just the browsing of samples and the quality of samples that you can get without having to store them, and it's just a great way of getting inspired, basically, because you just go through different things and suddenly you find a nice sound here and you can press like, and then you get it in. With Splice, the way to get it into your DAW session is a little bit cumbersome, but still the content is amazing, and it's just
well, they license a lot of stuff from people. I suppose that the idea is, well, I mean, because previously you would kind of go, I need some bass drums for this. I haven't got the right bass drum for this kind of track. You would maybe go online, you'd find a library and it goes, 100 bass drums from X or Y, and you download them and you go, actually, by the time you've done all of that, it's like an hour's gone by and you maybe still haven't found the bass drum. Whereas this way, you're going to be able to locate the things much more quickly. And I think that's where the strength of it lies, because I mean, it's going to speed up the whole process in many ways. And a lot of them are sort of drag and drop, aren't they? But not all, but like you say, Splice is a little bit different. But yeah, interesting stuff.
May I ask Yoad a question, please?
Yes, of course.
Do I understand correctly that you're streaming session data live from Dropbox to your computer in real time?
I wouldn't put it that way, but what I am doing, I mean, you can say that, but what I'm doing is I have a large dedicated drive just for Dropbox, and that's my project folder, and all the folders are stored in there.
Yeah.
And so when I save as or record audio or whatever I do in Logic or Pro Tools or whatever platform I'm using, it's already in Dropbox, which means it's going to
start propagating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I better understand now. Thank you so much.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. Yeah, that's been it's really interesting. So I think we're probably I've lost track of time because obviously we had a slight program crash, and it's the time on the timer is no longer relevant to where we started. But I think we've been going for a while. So the first podcast of 2018, you certainly got your minutes value, viewers. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. Steve, thank you for joining us. And as I say, your new wired internet is definitely working. That solved the problem. Your motion is fluid and your audio is unbroken. It's perfect. Oh, that sounds a bit rude, doesn't it?
Well, that's my motto for this year. Keep my motions fluid in 2018.
Just drink plenty of water, folks. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Also, Rich, it's been a pleasure having you aboard, and thank you again for for the performances. I think Chic on the BBC. I think you can still see it on the iPlayer and various other places on the net. And by all accounts, it went down really well, and it's going to be yet another classic Chic gig.
Well, thank you, Nick. We had a blast, and I have a feeling we're going to be spending some time in England this year. Or around and about the UK, it seems. And always enjoy the show, and it's great to be with Yoad and with Steve. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And also, Mr. Yoad Nevo, thank you very much for joining us as well. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure.
Are you back into Session World straight away? Are you back into a full recall, or are you've got...
Well, some new things, very exciting projects, some other stuff lingering from last year and actually from the year before. So some kind of ongoing projects. All good. Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. And that I'd like to say that to everyone, so we can wave into the sunset as we end the show. Also, before we do that, I'd just like to remind you can enter the iZotope competition. All you need to do is tweet the hashtag Ozone. Mix it well and Ozone 8. But thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next time. That's it for this week.